Hi, greetings and welcome again. The sun's going down, casting a few shadows on the on my face here, but anyway, let's crack on. Right, the 1980s Irish festivals. As I said, mentioned in my last vlog, one of my heroes, Kevin Nash, has become world champion on the Newry Canal, and anyway, as I said, during the 80s, it was the Irish festivals. It was great fun, and will live in my memory basically for years, to come. And it was during the 80s I befriended a new member of the Cardiff Nomads. His name was Doug Hornblow. He lived in the Welsh Valleys, and although he originated from Cardiff originally, he was a business person who loved his fishing. Now Doug and I become very good friends. In fact, we become travelling partners. And on one occasion, Doug and we actually stayed over in Ireland. What happened? We went for I think it was a fortnight, and anyway, we enjoyed our fishing and so much that we decided to stop on. I think we stopped on for another week or two, and of course our wives back home, we were wondering, we were frantic, wondering, what's happened to us, and we kept on giving the excuse that the car had broken down. And we were waiting for parts to arrive, and it was a good excuse because every time they phoned up we'd say, we're still waiting for the part to come. You know what Ireland's like. Whether it was convincing or not, I don't know, but anyway, it was that time as well that we got to know Dave Harrell as well, the Anglian correspondent. Now he was a Jack the Lad for the ladies as well, just like Kevin. And anyway, on many times on our hotel room, he used to, I don't know how he managed it, but he managed to get the keys to get into our room, and he used to leave little surprises in between the bed sheets, things like a Bible and a pack of condoms and things like that. He was a bit of a Jack the Lad, old Dave. But anyway, I did get to know Dave a lot better later on in life when our paths crossed many times fishing on the Welsh Raven, and at that time I got quite friendly with him and persuaded Dave to come and fish our local River Wye, at Hereford at Belmont, and explained how great the fishing was. And anyway, and when I introduced Dave to Belmont, I think that's when the River Wye in Belmont really took off, because he was a well-known, well-liked angler in the Midland circuit, and also writing for the Anglian press as well. And I believe he also won the Camasan title one year as well. So I think, as I said, his visits to the Avon. In fact, I've got to tell you about one story. He drew just above the bridge on Belmont at I think it was about peg 52, and I said to him, I said, if you win off there, Dave, I'll eat my hat. Well, I should have said that, shouldn't I? Because what happened, my good friend Richard Bayton, who I always classed as a world-class angler, he actually had 25-pounder chub, and Dave Hall had 23-pounder dace from that peg that I said was hopeless. So thanks to Richie, he saved me from eating my own hat. Anyway, as I said, I think Dave fell in love with the Wye, and shortly afterwards, the popularity of the river got quite big, and our little Super League become quite big. More teams. At that time, there weren't many Hereford anglers, believe it or not. Not like there is today. But as I say, it was become quite a popular venue. In fact, I think Dave Harrell in later years then, his brainchild, the Riverfest qualifiers, decided to have the finals on them, But again, we might talk about that later on in the vlogs. Yeah, so anyway, coming back to Ireland, I remember another great time when we went to Ireland. I went with a match fishing group called Glamorgan Anglers, or the rebels they were called then, because they were like the breakaway from the from the club itself, and they enjoyed the sport. In fact, they had quite a big following, and they used to travel to the urn system, and we used to catch loads of bags of roach and bream and hybrids, and I remember staying in the wooden huts, or wooden cabins overlooking the urn, and it was a great place, for falling out of bed and straight onto the wooden jetty and fishing. It was a truly a place of fishing heaven, really. It was fantastic. Now I remember we were having a little small knock-up, between the boys, and at that time there was a group of Liverpool anglers on this one occasion, and they were in one of the other chalets. And anyway, we thought we'd all have a little knock-up, the Welsh boys against the Liverpool boys, So anyway, I was sharing a platform with Chris Diamond. Don't know if anyone knows Chris Diamond, but he comes from a good fishing family, and he was, quite well known. I think, he's quite well known today, in fact. But anyway, I remember he was giving me a little bit of a lesson on feeder fishing, because feeder fishing never my forte, But anyway, and I asked him. I said, "What bait you using there?" Chris. He said, "Red worm," with his Scouse accent, And anyway, not having any worms, I said, "Oh, could I have a pinch?" He said, "Okay." So he gave me a few, and guess what? I ended up beating him. We had they were calling me "Kiss a pinch of worm, boyo." Every time, we had a pint in the evenings, but it was good fun. That I put a picture of Chris on the page. Anyway, something else dear to my heart, because it was during this period when I started my belief in PMA, positive mental attitude, and attributing all my salesmanships, taught me to be positive when it comes to selling. And I even studied hypnosis and visualizing techniques that I also found a lot of other sports people actually used, and I thought, I wonder whether I could adapt that to fishing. So I did. Of course, in my successful years in the 80s, I remember writing about this in an angling press, talking about visualizing, catching fish, and basically there was headlines. It said, "Is Branson bramy or barmy?" And even on the riverbank, other anglers would take the mick out of me, because I remember when I was in Ireland, and I was meditating and visualizing, and the other anglers were mocking me a little bit. Nevertheless, they soon changed their mind when I won a few competitions that we entered. For example, we went to fish the Boyle Festival, and and I was sort of contemplating like this, my eyes closed, and I was visualizing, catching bags of fish and visualizing drawing peg one. Well, anyway, I drew peg one, and it was uncanny, because I went on to win the Boyle Festival over the 2-day event, and it was during then that they all started thinking, hey, there must be something in this positive mental attitude and visualization. So anyway, it was great. Yeah. So anyway, more about that a little bit later, because as I said, it was positive mental attitude, really, which is what you need if you want to become a world champion. Anyway, it was during the Irish festivals I met a young angler, a young Alan Scotthorne from Barnsley. He was staying at the same place, guest house, and he was a young, inquisitive lad who seemed full of confidence, and and he knew me, obviously through the angling press, and he was asking these loads of questions. He was from what I said, Dick Clegg's stable, of anglers from the Barnsley Blacks, and I thought, he could be one to watch maybe for the future. Yeah, well, we all knew what happened then. Another good friend was Peter Hodge. Now Peter Hodge was from Somerset. He was a gentleman. in fact, he was a gentleman barber. He came from Newbridge and in Somerset, and often I'd, bump into him fishing Huntsville. And of course, when we were over in Ireland that one year, I was sharing a room with him, and it was good fun. Now, he loved to flirt with all the women as well. He'd dance it around in the evenings, and he'd be like a dynamo. He wouldn't stop. I'm sure somebody stuck something up his backside. But anyway, we were in the room one night, and as I've already mentioned, no, he didn't know this, but I got married a couple of years before to a black lady, Pat, and Peter didn't know this, and anyway, he was saying, we're talking away, he said, hey, you get some lovely black ladies, don't you? Yeah, lovely black lovelies in Cardiff. I said, yes, Peter, I married one. Oh, he said, I didn't mean to upset you. I know, I said, it was, I said it was a good laugh. In fact, we laughed about that for many years afterwards, with him and his big gob, like. Now, unfortunately, Pete did pass away a few years after, and he had a degenerated brain disease, and anyway, I've got to tell you the story because it's a bit unique, I think. In his last bequest, he wanted his ashes mixed with ground bait and thrown into the Huntsville, his beloved Huntsville at Wolverhampton Bridge. And the story is, and which is astounding, because after doing that, after they mixed his ground bait and his ashes in the ground bait and threw it over the bridge, the following week, the angler who drew that peg actually won the match. I don't know if it's a sign from up above, I don't know, but as I said, Pete was a well-known guy, and a very nice guy. In fact, he was a good angler as well. He always fished a worm, I remember, and I'll leave a picture of Peter on the end as well. Yeah, so as I said, mentioned the 80s was a good, or the early 80s was pretty good, because we had home internationals. Events were becoming more popular, especially in the home counties. We'd be fishing in Ireland on one or two occasions, and I remember fishing the River Cam, and I actually won it. That was highlight of the weekend for me. And I also won another match on the River Bann as well, as I mentioned earlier, with a lovely bag of roach, a pole to hand, £73. So again, Ireland was starting to become quite good for me. We also enjoyed, we went up and fished a festival as well on the Bann, and it was in its heyday when all the roach used to sort of run up. And I had over 2 days, I had two great weights. I had a bag of £135, pole to hand, and £123. And as I said, I come second, and the only one to beat me was a guy named Sean Foy, which I mentioned earlier. He had £140, I think, on one day, and he just beat me by a couple of pounds. Anyway, another home international in Scotland. I also won another home international, Kilburney Lock. I remember, how we used to travel up there with John Mayers on the coach, and John, he was a great coach and a great, I wouldn't say coach, a great manager. He'd organise things and make sure everything run pretty good, like. But anyway, I never get this one. So he had a brainstorm. We were all travelling up in a coach, and he gave us little labels, and on the labels our instructions of how we're going to fish in the practice leading up to the match. And mine was a feeder on the pole. I thought, oh my God, on a canal. Oh, it's a good job I never tried that, otherwise I probably wouldn't have won it. But I won that one as well. So there you are. Anyway, and during the period of my matches career in the mid-80s, everything I touched seemed to go my way, including a back-to-back match with the home internationals. I won one on the Rothbach Lake. I also then went on and I won the Sundridge Pole Championships on the Regent's Canal in London. I won £2 grand. and that was a pretty good payout even in them days, you know. I'll tell you a story about it, because I drew a fancied peg actually near the zoo, and I caught small roach on the single bloodworm, you know, having to break down twice, you know, shifting my pole back twice, and it was, you know, it was a bit awkward, but anyway, I had a low weight. It's only £4.11. And now the fortunate thing was I beat a local lad, John McCarthy, and John McCarthy, I beat him by half an ounce. And I remember poor old Johnny, because when we went back to the draw, I had the £2 check, and he had the pool money, which is just a couple of quid, like, which was you know, a real shame, really. Not really, but you know, as I said, that was a nice little picker for me. So anyway, right. I'll leave you at that now on this one, and I'll come back next time and I'll tell you another international. I won a friendly international against Nantes from France, again using bloodworm on the waggler, which, you know, as I said, is something that we learned, you know, from Ireland of all places when Kevin Ashurst won, and you know, and the Swedish guy come second. Okay, more about that next time. See you next time.